Hi, so today I will tell you why you should learn B or Beam or any other text editor in Linux like that you like for terminal, and why you should not use Visual Studio Code or depend all the time with using that when working with remote servers. So I know this video is going to sound like the typical video like, yeah, Linux is better, Windows sucks, etc., but that's not the case. I am talking about personal experience here. I am not making stuff. This is something that happened in my work, in my last work, and I will start talking about it right now. So the first issue we had with Visual Studio Code, it was the fact that it actually install a folder in your server. It's called a VS Code server folder. That usually it's in home, your user, and VS Code server folder. And if you're using Visual Studio Code SSH extension and you install another extension inside Visual Studio Code, like for example a PHP debugger extension or something like that, if the extensions broke, it's not going to give issues in your local machine, it's going to give issues in your remote server. And that's something that actually happened. We had a 100% CPU usage, processor usage in the remote server, because one of the Visual Studio Code extensions was literally breaking our system in the remote server, not in the local machine of the front-end developer. So I had to literally reach out the hosting. I had to say, please shut down my machine, and when after the server restart, I had to uninstall that VS Code server folder and say to my front-end developer, do not use any extension when working with Visual Studio and my remote server. That's one very big issue. Another problem is related to fixing things fast. What I mean by that, I will tell you a personal story. One day, it was a weekend, I was in a restaurant with my girlfriend, and I had a notification in my phone that says production is down. Literally, we had an issue with a server with like thousands of users, and that was a headache, you know. And if I didn't know how to use B or Beam, and I only knew how to use Visual Studio Code, I will have to go back to my house, turn on my computer or my laptop, etc., and fix everything from there. But thankfully, because I know how to work with a Linux terminal and I know how to use B and Beam, I was just able to just pop up my phone, use my Termux Android application. I use Android, but if you use iPhone, you can use Termux. Anyway, and in Termux, connect to my remote production server, fix what it was needed to fix, touch any configuration I needed to touch with Beam, and then everything was okay. Okay, so that's another reason why it's very important to know B or Beam and why you should avoid working with Visual Studio Code when working with servers. Okay, so another issue I found, it was that in our work we actually we know actually my bosses, you could say it, actually hired a freelance worker, and he was not experienced working with Linux, etc. So he wanted to connect to the server with Visual Studio Code. Because of the experience I had with the remote SSH plugin, I said to him, use that without plugins or use the SFTP plugin. Okay, he chose the FTP option. And the issue with that is that sometimes that extension tended to like make files like go empty blank, like some kind of strange bug. And look, I am not saying that Visual Studio is bad. I am not saying that you should stop using Visual Studio. I think it's an excellent software and it's very cool to program with that. But I am saying that you should not rely only with Visual Studio, and that knowing B or Beam or any other terminal text editor, it's going to help you a lot if you are having to touch things in the server, if you are modifying files remotely, and stuff like that. It really helps you. So, well, that's another of the reasons why I do recommend to know B or Beam and do not rely only with Visual Studio Code. So that's all, I guess. Um, I guess that's what I wanted to say, and I hope that this personal experience of myself can help you and others. It doesn't matter if you are a front-end developer, if you're a back-end developer, if you do DevOps. I do recommend, like strongly recommend you to learn B or BIM, Emacs, whatever you want. But do not rely only on Visual Studio Code because it can truly break your server. It happened to us 2 times actually, and I had to somehow convince my front-end developer to do not use extensions when using the SSH plugin in Visual Studio Code. I would prefer him to do not use Visual Studio Code at all in that case, but that's okay. He wanted to use it anyway. So yes, please learn BRB. And it's not only because the issues that can potentially give to the server, but because actually the fast response in case something goes bad and you have to do something fast in a inconvenient moment. Like you can just pop up your phone, join to the server using a Unix terminal, and fix whatever you have to fix fast or or configure fast with your phone in case of urgency. You cannot do that with Visual Studio Code. So 2 points: security and readiness, like being able to solve things fast in case of urgency. I am probably know that someone who is an expert in Visual Studio Code is going to say me, no, if you configure the software like this, like that, blah, 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 it will probably show me some kind of application or whatever that will allow Visual Studio Code to work in a phone. But I guess that's not the point. The point is that using a terminal and BRB is going to work everywhere. And it's a software that has spent more in the industry that Visual Studio Code by 4 years. It is not full of things that, like, it's a very simple software and simplicity is best, you know, like you don't not want a very complicated thing working in your remote server. I won't like that at all personally. If you need to learn B or being pretty, that's the very basics. It's not bad. It's actually very comfortable. I got used to it. Yes, it took a time, but I do not regret the decision at all. You can talk about B, Beam, Emacs, whatever. That's up to you. I don't care about that, but learn to use a text editor in the terminal. That's my message. Okay, so I hope that you got the idea, and thank you a lot for listening to my video. Goodbye.